This week's topic is ICP in wrestling. Now, ICP actually were trained wrestlers. They were training to become wrestlers in the 80s and actually tried to make a go of actually becoming trained, real professional wrestlers. You see, these were the kids who, when they said, don't try this at home, decided to do it anyways. And that's how they got their start, was in backyard wrestling. And then they actually worked their way into actually indie bookings and stuff, which is where they met Sabu and Rob Van Dam. But eventually Violent J got tired of the backstage politics and they left wrestling and focused on their music career, which explains why they became big-time musicians instead of big-time professional wrestlers. Why they had to separate themselves from other clown posses. There are no other clown posses. We don't know, though. But, so they become these big-time rap group. And in 1997, they are approached by Rob Van Dam and Sabu about coming to ECW to do something. So they meet with Rob Van Dam, Sabu, and Paul Heyman, and they inform Paul Heyman that they are trained professional wrestlers. This makes Paul Heyman very happy because they can take bumps. So they come out at ECW's second pay-per-view and do some rapping, and then Rob Van Dam and Sabu come out and attack them, and then Sandman rubs Rob Van Dam and Sabu off. Runs them off, not rubs them off, which I suppose ECW could have them rub them off in the middle of the ring, but that might entertain the crowd. Anyways. So, then they decide to release a wrestling videotape of all their ICP, not Sandman and Rob Van Dam. ICP decides to release a wrestling videotape of all of the best, well, the best they think there is, of the Japanese death matches, hardcore and death matches. And it is called Bloody Mania. And it features ICP doing commentary for all these insane death matches, because they were a big fan of the hardcore death matches, which we all are. They're just getting hard to find on YouTube. And this thing sells a bunch of copies. So then they decided to do Bloody Mania Live, bring in some of the big hardcore wrestlers who aren't signed to one of the three big federations, and some of the older wrestlers like Abdullah the Butcher and King Kong Bundy. And in the main event, ICP wrestles these guys who they just brought in, called the Chicken Boys. And it does great. So then, in 98, or was it 99? I believe it was 98. WWF brings ICP in mainly to rap during the Oddities' entrance at SummerSlam. And ICP's like, well, we want to wrestle. We're trained wrestlers. We want to wrestle. So WWF books them in a feud with the Headbangers, which kind of makes sense. It's like rap versus metal kind of thing. Only the headbangers refused to work. The headbangers decided to work stiff. They no-sell ICP's offense. And so that feud is pulled. Well, at the same time, ICP didn't ask for payment for wrestling. They asked that WWF just air their commercial during Raw, which Vince McMahon never did. And so they leave WWF and head to where else but WCW. At which point they form not one but two stables. The second of which is the Dark Carnival, and mostly lose. Then they head to Ring of Honor after WCW and ECW close, and get booed out of the building. Then they head to TNA, where they have a brief feud with Jeff Jarrett and Disco Inferno, now called Glenn Gilberti, and they leave there. But in '99, ICP started their own wrestling federation called Juggalo Championship Wrestling. And it was mainly hardcore matches. It was very much like ECW. It had a very ECW feel because it was those kind of hardcore death matches. Well, after a few years, they renamed it Juggalo Championship Wrestling. And it became like a real promotion. And they had a show that they broadcast over the internet leading up to their main pay-per-view each year, Bloody Mania, which was held at the Gathering of the Juggalos. Now, they have a show called Lunacy, Juggalo Championship Wrestling Lunacy, which is on YouTube and leads to, I think they got like 3 or 4 pay-per-views a year, which are on Twitter or something like that. It's where the AEW pay-per-views used to be on the internet for non-Americans. And so, yeah, they're still kind of entwined with wrestling. So join me later in the week when we will look at the movie Pinocchio on the Moon, where Pinocchio's on the moon.